Let me begin by first bringing you up to speed on the current state of Pokémon on the Switch. The first games to be released in this series on the Switch were Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the second remake of the Kanto games from 30 years ago to date that had none of the extra content or gameplay improvements of Fire Red and Leaf Green, no abilities, no held items, no Sevi Islands, hell, you couldn't even fight wild Pokémon, you just tossed your balls and hoped to capture them. Suffice to say, this was controversial, but seeing as Let's Go had its own good ideas, surely the next big mainline game would be a work of art. And then there was Sword and Shield. I'm not sure I can say anything that hasn't already been said. In a vacuum, this game is just as good as any other Pokemon game since X and Y. I'm sure that people new to the franchise picked this game up and enjoyed it, and that's okay. For guys like me, however, who have been playing since the start of the series, we ended up scrutinizing Sword and Shield far more than we normally would, because we could see that they were cutting corners to get it released in time with the anime, the merchandise, and so forth, and then taking further steps to get even more money out of loyal fans. After all, you don't need to have all 900 Pokemon in one game if you're planning on releasing a DLC to add a chunk of them back in for half the price of the base game and overcharging for a cloud storage service that cost triple what the last one did. Makes me worry for Generation 9. I remember saying back then that I was more hyped for the spin-offs than the main series. That proved to be true with new Pokémon Snap, which had a lot of hype going because it looked fantastic, and it was a sequel to a game from the first generation with a lot of good memories attached. It was outsourced to Bandai Namco, but I would say they did quite well. It was fun to explore that gameplay style once more, especially because the game made me appreciate a lot of Pokémon that I had never thought much of up to that point. Capturing on film, more enjoyable in the long run than capturing in tiny spheres and making them fight. Who knew? Unfortunately, the anti-hype returned yet again with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Oh my Arceus. I never played this one and I don't want to. Just look at it with your eyes. If you played this game and you liked it, great, fine, I understand. Please find a way to play Platinum, you'll be better off for it. You know, I really did want these to be good so I could put serious time into the Sinnoh region for the first time ever, but apparently the idea of taking probably the weakest region in the series and turning it into something great wasn't appealing to Game Freak at the time because it was outsourced to some company that has never made a full video game before this, and it shows. So now that you know that, you could probably see why there would be hype surrounding Legends Arceus, the latest spin-off. I'm probably pronouncing Arceus way wrong. I apologize, I've just been saying it that way for years. This game was set up to be something completely different from every other Pokemon game. Something refreshing and new, big open worlds to explore, in a similar vein as Breath of the Wild with more natural world navigation. Loads of side quests to pursue, and a main quest devoid of gym battles, evil teams, and all that other stuff that was getting tiresome. Something refreshing, something we desperately needed. And I can say that this game is exactly that and then some. Who could have expected them to actually do this? When did they decide on this? Games aren't announced the instant they start development. They had to be planning this for a while. It's important to point out how innovative this is because, unfortunately, this is nowhere near an absolutely perfect masterpiece, but it is refreshing and very much enjoyable. I'm about to praise a lot of what this game does. I'm also going to tear it a new one for its faults. But I wanted to make it clear that this game is trying something very new for the series, and hopefully Game Freak learns from it, because with this as a baseline, Game Freak could put out something spectacular in the future. That's another cool thing, this actually wasn't outsourced. Maybe they were focusing on this and just left the Sinnoh remakes to somebody else, but then why even bother with the Sinnoh remakes? And yeah, let's move on. Let me start with the least important aspect. The graphics are just shy of a total disaster. Sword and Shield look like art compared to whatever happened here. The textures are legit blurry. Animations look choppy if they're far in the distance. Things pop into existence or weird texture stuff happens when you get close to it. And for some reason, the characters are extremely pixelated when in a cave or overlapping a body of water. It's very strange. Character animations are okay-ish, but their eyes are just noticeably huge, and they never seem to blink that often. Normally I'm very forgiving when it comes to graphics, but something seriously weird happened here, and I don't know what. That said, I can imagine them being pressed for time and therefore focusing on what actually matters, and I can't comment on what resources they might have had available, so let's just say they ought to have taken some time to polish up the game's look and leave it at that. At the very least, the game controls very well. As this is an open-world game, the way you navigate it deserves special attention. As you earn more abilities from moving through the maps, it gets more and more fun to fly across or swim across or even climb, as the Pokemon you're allowed to ride on can chain into one another, switching on the fly to get to places faster. You can even test your skill with this in a couple of mini-games that use the open world. Very easy to get a grip on the movements you're going to be making. This is important too because this is the first game in the franchise where wild Pokemon can actually attack and hurt the player. You actually don't black out if your last Pokemon faints, as you can still physically get away from them. Not all Pokemon are aggressive, but when one wants to hurt you, oh boy can it hurt you. You do not want to be near a cliff when one is trying to shove you off of it. You can even suffer status effects yourself, which I thought was just genius. Some of these seem like they should do a lot more than cause me to black out though, know what I mean? Now, capturing and fighting is where things really get interesting. You have a lot of options when it comes to approaching a wild Pokemon. You can capture stuff pretty easily by just throwing balls at them without even entering a fight, but unlike Let's Go, this is just one possible approach with actual depth to it. If you hit the Pokemon in the side or from behind without them noticing, that increases the chance of a successful capture. Heavy balls and feather balls are present in addition to regular balls. The former are not going as far when thrown, but is much more effective when you hit the target from behind, and the latter goes a very large distance when thrown and is geared towards capturing aerial Pokemon. Stealth is also important. This time around, it's you that gets to hide in the grass like a predator and surprise your quarry. Some Pokemon will run for their lives if you're spotted, others will get aggressive and attack you, going as far as to swat away your Pokeballs until you engage them in battle. You do this by throwing the balls containing your own Pokemon at them, not only letting you send out a specific Pokemon at any time by choosing their ball, but also, hitting your target from behind starts the battle with you getting a free turn. It's you that initiates battle, and the game gives you options for how to do that. Just be careful about starting a fight when you're being chased, otherwise those Pokemon will gang up on you in the battle as well. Capturing is the name of the game this time around. In other games, gotta catch 'em all is just a side objective. Here, it's what you're put into the game to do in the first place. But just capturing one of every Pokemon isn't enough. To progress through the game, you gotta do various tasks for each Pokemon to learn more about them. Now, you don't need to do every research task, that'd be just crazy. They apparently want you to capture upwards of 25 of each Pokemon. There's no way. What am I, that one Pokemon ranch with 200 Bidoof in it? You earn points that increase your rank whenever you do a task, and after doing a 10th task for that Pokemon, the Pokédex entry is considered complete and you get a big bonus for it. The story won't progress past certain points without completing tasks, which can be a little annoying as I had to figure out a couple ways to clear tasks efficiently. A lot of Pokemon have tasks where you need to see them use a specific move, which you can accomplish by having your own Pokemon use the move, or defeat them with a super effective move, so finding ways to do these at the same time is one of the ways of clearing this part of the game quicker. Throwing food at Pokemon can also be a task, so there's a little variety there too. While some tasks are more repetitive than they should be, this does create a gameplay loop where every Pokemon caught or action taken contributes to advancing the game state in some way, so I'm fine with it. Plus, it really gets you using all the different Pokemon that you're capturing if you intend to evolve them as you go. And I can keep going. I haven't even gotten into the vast amount of items you can use in the field. Food items can lure or distract Pokemon if they like it, smoke bombs can make you invisible, there's a stealth spray for moving undetected, snowballs or balls of mud can stun or distract Pokemon. Some of these are found throughout the overworld areas, but you'll also find crafting materials for creating your own balls, potions, and other supplies. Not as in-depth as Minecraft by any stretch, but it is pretty nice that you don't have to buy anything if you know where to look and what to craft. Items can be shaken out of trees or smashed out of rocks using any of your own Pokemon, and they get a little EXP for it too. Sometimes you'll even find a wild Pokemon in whatever you were smashing. In short, The act of capturing is far less tedious now since we've ditched random encounters, yet it's more in-depth than toss a quick ball and pray, which worked 99% of the time in Sword and Shield, and probably previous games too. Speaking of quality of life, there's plenty of that going around too. Game Freak really did a good job cutting out all the unnecessary clicking you had to do in menus. You do not instantly evolve when you reach the right level. Now you go into the menu and trigger it on your own, instead of having to stop it with B every time, and this also means you don't even have to level up once the requirements are met. You do not have to constantly accept or reject new moves. Whenever you want to alter your set, you can go in the menu and choose 4 new moves anytime. I think you can make a few further improvements, but hey, no fussing around with move deleters or relearners or any of that. Storage for Pokemon and items has a way nicer interface. EXP share is still always on, but I don't actually mind. It won't overlevel you at all. With Capture EXP, it's a breeze for lower level Pokemon to catch up. The game is also not split into multiple versions, and you can find items to do trade evolutions without actually trading. You pay a move tutor to teach moves, and you can learn quite a number of them out of the gate. No more TMs, no more breeding. It's like every annoyance I complained about in the main series is basically just not there. So, that should be enough praise to indicate that I do in fact like this game. A lot, in fact. I spent 45 hours capturing all the Pokemon. Unfortunately, while there may be a lot that goes right in this game, there's also a lot that goes wrong too. I know I have this reputation, let's say, of complaining about everything and anything, and it might be deserved by some stretch of the imagination, but this is the section of the video where I tear into everything that even looks like it's peeling off improperly, so feel free to stop watching, I guess. Your free time is important to me too. Now then, the plot. Not gonna refrain from spoilers, so you'll have to skip ahead to avoid that. Honestly though, this is the last franchise you should be expecting a good video game plot from. Clearly Unova was an exception to the norm rather than a step forward. This game opens with you getting isekai'd into Hisui, which is Sinnoh but 200 years ago. Also, you have an Arceus brand phone that he sends you messages on. It's always a smartphone, isn't it? Very swiftly, you're given the goal of capturing all Pokemon, and along the way we end up quelling the mysterious frenzy of several high-powered Pokemon in the region. However, the natives distrust you in the face of a crisis and exile you, after which you fight either Dialga or Palkia, depending on the choice you make, get no gratitude whatsoever, and the credits roll. That sounded way too familiar. Anyways, you probably got the impression that the main plot wasn't that interesting. It really wasn't. I think the main problem is that there are just too many cutscenes, which still aren't skippable. I think you could convey the point of this game in way less dialogue. I didn't take much of an interest in the characters because they honestly try too hard to act tough or look cool or just plain flat. They feel like they're just there to beat trainer battles, since we kind of need a few of those so that you can actually do something with all those Pokemon you've been capturing. I honestly just wanted to get back to capturing stuff, since that's what Arceus tells you to do at the start of the game, and tells you to continue doing after the last major threat to the world is dealt with. Speaking of which, last warning for spoilers. The reason the Pokemon in the region go berserk is because of a hole in the space-time continuum caused by Giratina, who allegedly is upset at being trapped in the distortion world by Arceus. Giratina asks a human to gather Arceus's plates. That human ropes you into doing it for him since he wants to be Arceus's chosen, but you are, so you kick his rear, you fight Giratina, he leaves, apparently changing his mind entirely about the whole revenge thing. Allows you to capture him later. Also, Arceus himself mentions nothing about all of this and just tells you to complete the Pokédex. So you do that, fight him, and then nothing really happens at all. No answers to the question of why you were the chosen one. I mean, the reason the player was sent back in time in the first place was because someone from the future who understands Pokemon has to be sent back to the time when nobody understood Pokemon, which probably creates space-time problems. But why this player specifically, and what happens after? Do you return home? I mean, there's not even a scene like in Mystery Dungeon where you choose to stay. It's a lame knockoff of the original Mystery Dungeon. I can't believe it. Have I mentioned I hate Mystery Dungeon? A lot. So, anyways, yeah, we have a very weak story that doesn't offer a whole lot outside of a few interesting moments and little in the way of closure. Just now, as I'm writing this, I actually thought of a way it could really hit your emotions if it wanted to. It almost made me cry. Both because it's a really good idea, I think, And because it'll never be implemented anyways, we've missed our chance. Basically, imagine if the player asked Arceus, "Why me?" And then we see a bunch of images from every game in the series, mainline or otherwise, and then Arceus says, "Because you love Pokemon with all your heart." And then Pallet Town music starts playing. Boy, would that get me good. But let me say one thing I did like about this game's story. The world building. Fans of the Sinnoh games are going to notice a lot of references to the original Diamond and Pearl games. From the Soul Town being Jubilife Village, to Spear Pillar, to the Diamond and Pearl clans, Team Galaxy, characters resembling Cyrus and Cynthia right down to the teams they use. If you loved Sinnoh, this game is full of nods to the classic games it's essentially a prequel to. At one point, you learn that a hero and his 10 partners challenged Arceus himself and earned his respect. The descendants of these 10 partners are the bosses and ride Pokemon you find in the game. Even Pokeballs are a new technology here, meaning that many trainers simply do not use them, and even question the ethics of using them like you'd imagine they would. Also, Sinnoh was originally based on the Hokkaido region of Japan, and so this game takes a lot of inspiration from Hokkaido's history in particular. It's the reason, for example, that the starters are Oshawott, Rowlet, and Cyndaquil. These are all carefully thought out details that are fascinating to find out about, so they have that going for them. I thought it was worth a mention. I can tell you from experience that coming up with interesting lore is not the same as writing a story that fits within that lore. The Elder Scrolls taught me that well enough. And now we come to the battle system, which is where I have quite a lot to say. If you will excuse my increasing repetition, I would like to reiterate yet again that trying something new is always good, even if you miss the mark. Which they kinda did here. The battle system has gotten an overhaul. While it's still turn-based, the game uses a time delay system in which each action affects when your next turn comes up. Think Final Fantasy X or Mega Man X Command Mission. Moves that would have had high priority or multiple hits in the previous games now make your next turn come up faster, and moves like Hyper Beam make your next turn come up later. In addition, if your Pokemon has reached the right level, they can master a move, allowing them to use that move in such a way that they trade their next turn for a bigger attack, or trade damage for getting their next turn faster. Now, this is an interesting take on the system, but honestly, it doesn't work nearly the way they want it to. Part of that is because damage calculation was also overhauled in such a way that you can expect a super effective hit to basically guarantee a KO no matter what. In my playthrough, the game ended up becoming all about one-shotting them before they one-shot me, and for some reason, nearly every alpha Pokemon and boss Pokemon was some form of sweeper, a Pokemon with a high variety of typed attacks for KOing anything they might come up against. Every Pokemon I tried to use was getting nailed in one shot by most trainers, and this time the computer is actually a pretty smart opponent. People complain about how the main series is basically playing rock, paper, scissors with a type chart, so a harder challenge would be welcome, but here, that same problem is magnified tenfold. I rarely have any time to set up a stat buff because I'll just get KO'd anyways. And I can't switch or use items because, due to the new turn system, any switching or item use is completed before the opponent selects a move. Switching is no longer safe. You can't change to a flying type to avoid an earthquake. They'll know to rock slide instead. Further, if a battle starts and your opponent is up first, you just have to take whatever they throw at you, even if your lead Pokemon has unfortunately run into a really bad matchup. Now, part of this may be due to me playing suboptimally. I did notice the enemy levels were rising faster than mine. Well, when you're getting KO'd as often as I am, it makes sense, because KO'd Pokemon never collect any EXP. And what's more, you only collect EXP at the end of battles, not before. If you conclude a trainer battle with only one Pokemon left, only that Pokemon gets any EXP instead of the others collecting EXP whenever they successfully knock anything out. Also, this game is about capturing and using lots of different Pokemon. It can be hard to focus on raising one or two without shelling out for EXP candies. Another system I knew nothing about until I looked it up was how effort levels work. Another decision from Game Freak that I am very happy about is that they just tossed nature's effort values and individual values into the dumpster. Nobody actually liked spending hours breeding in order to optimize these. Side note, after failing to find a Cherubi for 44 hours, I can say I would have kept breeding just to be able to get babies easier considering their offensively low spawn rate. So instead they just have effort levels, which you raise by using an item, or some Pokemon have a few levels at base. So I checked the Samurott I've had since the start of the game to see if his effort levels were the reason everything nails him in one shot. His effort levels were all 0. Now, it's true that I hadn't used any grit dust to increase these at all, but I find it kind of baffling that he earned nothing throughout the entire game from all the tree bashing and fighting he was doing. If you're going to need high levels in the defensive stats to survive the later parts of the game, it would probably be a good idea to make it possible to earn levels without a consumable item that might need to be farmed. I still like it better than effort values, sans the lack of any strategic decision about what stats to put the points into, seeing as they can all reach the maximum with no limitations. They say this game is harder, but is trading one-hit kills really a tougher challenge? Well, not really, at least not until the toughest trainer in the game, which comes at the end of collecting all the Arceus plates and capturing a ton of legendaries. This trainer is not hard because he has Cynthia's team. He's hard because you have to face him and Giratina all in one go with no healing. And after Giratina goes down, he instantly heals to full and you have to fight his origin form, effectively making this a battle against 8 Pokemon in total. That's how they got difficulty out of this. It took several tries to get the Origin Giratina with the Pokemon I had. Every max revive was followed by a one-hit KO, so I wasn't exactly doing well on time or resources anyways. Then I thought, didn't I just capture like half a dozen legendaries and get the new super forms for Dialga and Palkia? So yeah, like a 2016 VGC player, I filled my team with overpowered legendaries and it still wasn't enough! Again, I have to admit, this is without any grit dusts or move tutoring. So what solution did I come up with? Get this! Evasion. The Cresselia you capture comes with a move that recovers HP and gives an evasion boost. Due to sheer dumb luck, I used this and managed to get Cresselia to wipe out Proto-Cynthia's entire dang team because they kept missing their attacks over and over. My team was at full health for Giratina, so of course he got nailed too. I didn't want to win this through a fluke, but them's the breaks, I guess. Ah, and speaking of moves, there are an awful lot of moves that were omitted this time around. Sometimes it makes sense, like who's going to use Growl or Harden, right? But a lot of non-damage moves are just not there either, like Leech Seed, Toxic, Protect, Barrier, Reflect, Light Screen, and I also struggled to find status moves on anything besides Pikachu or Paris. Enemies would use stuff like Rollout or Petal Dance, but apparently you aren't locked into those moves for more than a turn like you normally would be. Multi-targeting moves are gone too, which would have helped because not all trainers use Pokeballs and just send out their entire team at you at the same time. Naturally, there are no double battles, so you just get ganged up on. Doubles would actually be much better for this system, but of course, the fans would riot if anything remotely close to an Ori game ever happened again, right? Omitting all this might be because they also omitted link battles, which, okay, this is a single-player focused game, but that also means they've omitted the part of the game you'd actually use your collection of fully evolved and optimized Pokemon on. You could easily prepare a viable team in this game, yet it's unable to be truly used for anything once the game's over. But I digress. As for status effects, they're still in, but Sleep and Freeze are now just reskins of Paralysis. They don't stop you completely. Abilities and held items were also omitted again, and that stings in particular because they really could have allowed the player to prepare for the kind of enemies they'll be up against. I'm not sure if weather effects are present either. There certainly weren't any of those moves. Yeah, long story short, I'd have just preferred the traditional battle system. The out-of-battle stuff is already very refreshing. We didn't need an attempt at a new combat system with all the depth taken out. Oh, but one thing you can do is move around in battles and even get hit by the moves. I have no idea if this does anything, but I guess you have a 100% run rate because now you can just walk away. Oh, I've gone through all this without talking about the nobles. Sorry. So, a new kind of battle is also introduced, one in which you face off against a high-powered boss Pokemon known as a Noble. It starts with a Noble attacking you directly, and you must duck and dodge while tossing bombs at them until they run out of stamina. At particular intervals, you'll be able to send out a Pokemon to engage in traditional battle with a Noble. However, this is optional, and you could totally just keep tossing bombs. Knocking them out in battle causes them to take extra stamina damage from bombs for a short while, but I didn't need that all the time. I only send out my own Pokemon to give myself a break from the dodging. The idea of the Nobles is to get the player involved in the action as much as their Pokemon is. I think it's fine, but if you play it like I did, then it's really just an attack-dodge minigame. After all, if you send out a Pokemon and they faint, they're not getting their EXP from this, now are they? They ought to have given each fight multiple phases, where you alternate between dodging and bomb throwing in one phase while engaging in battle in another, and the attack patterns and movesets could change between the phases, maybe even have stuff that you do in one phase affect the others. They're fine as is, but they could be so much more. In fact, this kind of fight is what I wanted to see out of new Pokemon Snap, except replace fighting with picture taking. Now that'd have been epic. If there's another new Snap, they should totally take a page out of the Legends Arceus playbook. I suppose that only leaves side quests. There are a lot of them, and many of the rewards are actually good and useful to you, so completing them is certainly worth it, but not a lot of side quests are fun to complete on their own. There's a lot of fetching certain items or Pokemon or completing particular Pokédex entries, which is what you're going to do anyways to advance the story. Some quests are interesting. The 107 wisps that unlock Spiritomb, for example, are similar to Korok seeds or Gold Skulltulas, and really get you exploring in order to get them all, and you're constantly rewarded for getting them. The Shiny Ponyta is another neat quest because you're actually capturing something special in a fixed location. They don't get more memorable than that, though. It's a shame you never have to track a special Pokemon or chase it down throughout the maps like Johto's legendary beasts. That would have actually worked fantastically here. The Weather Trio makes things much more interesting and frustrating, but they still only took one Ultra Ball from me. One last factor I want to cover is the roster. There are a total of 240 Pokemon, less than the regional decks from Sword and Shield, though it should be noted that not only is there more animation work per Pokemon this time, there are actually completely new Pokemon made just for this game. The dex cuts in Sword and Shield were awful, of course, but I'm actually starting to think that ripping the Band-Aid off is going to be a net positive in the future, because now spin-offs can bring in entirely new Pokemon without having to worry about backwards compatibility. We actually passed 900 total Pokemon in Legends Arceus, so that's cool. 2 more legendaries are available if you have saves from other Switch games, which I find offensive because you expect being a waste of money on the Sinnoh remakes just to have a Darkrai. But they aren't required to complete the decks, and there's no multiplayer to use them on anyways, so it's like, whatever. Not worth dwelling on. Some of the included Pokemon are a little odd, however. Clearly they wanted every Pokemon newly added in Sinnoh's original games to be included, and almost everything out of the Sinnoh regional decks from that game is here as well. However, considering the time period, this leads to some oddities, such as Magnemite and especially Porygon, since I'm pretty sure those were man-made, accidentally or otherwise. To get around this from a lore perspective, there are random space-time rifts where the mentioned Pokemon, as well as others, can appear along with items like link cables you need to evolve if you don't have anyone to trade with. I think they could have ditched the space-time rifts and just not included Porygon and such, seeing as there are Sinnoh Pokemon that didn't make it in anyways, like Goldeen. Especially because the rifts end up being something you have to go into over and over in order to farm evolution items. There are way too many of these. One of the great problems with Generation 4 that unfortunately bleeds into this game because they adhered to the original evolution methods as much as possible, in spite of everything else that was changed. I have one last point to talk about before we wrap things up. As you know, to complete this game, you actually have to complete the Pokédex and catch one of every Pokémon. Well, what's unfortunate is that eventually you kind of run into a brick wall in that regard. Namely that an insulting amount of RNG is involved in the ultimate end goal of completing a collection. There's RNG in item spawns when you're searching for the evolution items. There's RNG in finding baby Pokemon because the spawn rate is low. And there's RNG in getting the Weather Trio because they're only found in specific weather conditions. Friendship grinding is the usual headache, and I swear Cherubi must have gone extinct because I cannot find the thing at all. Side note, since writing that part of the review, I have in fact found Cherubi, and the only thing left for me are the wisps, which are also annoying to find. Eventually I caved and looked up stuff online, but that doesn't help much because this isn't a problem with the game, so I shouldn't include it in a review, but let me just say that none of the sites I went to had complete information. They tell you what part of each map a Pokemon can be found in, but they fail to realize that there are Pokemon that are in very, very specific locations, and they should have marked it on the map. Turtwig, for instance, is found in one specific pond that went completely unmentioned online, and speaking of which, the developers could, no actually should, have helped with finding stuff like Turtwig by allowing Ursaluna to track specific Pokemon, or the Wisps even, just to make this not as stupid or time-consuming. I know I said the Wisps were a good side quest, but that was before I realized that, unlike Gold Skulltulas, you have to find all of them instead of most of them. They also should have either reduced the number of evolution items, like just have Magmar evolve by Firestone or something, or let the player craft them somehow so I don't have to fart around with STDs or collecting satchels to grind out merit points to exchange for expensive items. Basically, endgame bad and grindy. One more very definitely final point I want to make. I'm sorry this is dragging on, but right after I finished writing this review, another update dropped. A free content update to celebrate Pokemon Day, along with the announcement of Generation 9, which is a topic for another time. This content update adds more quests and things to do. While I haven't really dove into it quite yet, I can already say that more free content is always welcome, so that puts it a step above Sword and Shield's DLC debacle. Just felt that that was worth a mention. Maybe they really are learning. Well, that about wraps it up. To conclude, while there's a lot that they could work on here, I really think Legends Arceus has laid a fantastic new foundation for a new kind of Pokemon game, and already I see people speculating on what region should get its own Legends game. I mean, we're going off the assumption that there will be another one, but even if there isn't, we can also hope that this inspires more quality of life improvements for the main series and drives the company behind it to realize what could be done with just a little extra effort. Yeah, we can hope. I'm still not the most hopeful guy, but, you know, pleasant thoughts. That will conclude the Legends Arceus review. Check it out, and thanks for watching.